Hello everyone, it is time for my third ever, you get like one a year, chapter spotlight. For those of you who are not familiar, this is going to be a spoiler video about basically a spoiler review of a single chapter. A lot of the time I find I don't do spoiler reviews because it's just there's like so much to talk about that I end up not knowing what to talk about. But I like doing essentially spoiler dives into a single chapter. And I try and pick chapters that stand out to me but are not like super iconic or famous. So this one is going to be Catelyn V, A Storm of Swords. And you might be thinking, Jake, are you sure that's not a pretty famous chapter? You are thinking of Catelyn VII. So as a warning, this is going to be full spoilers for... We're just going to do full spoilers for Song of Ice and Fire. I'm going to... I might accidentally mention how something is foreshadowing something past this chapter, and a lot of people have read A Song of Ice and Fire or watched Game of Thrones and know what happens, so I'm not that worried about making this a spoiler video. But this... essentially, this entire chapter was cut from the show. Like, the events of this chapter, just like D&D decided it wasn't important. But I am obviously making a chapter spotlight, so I think it is important. So I will remind people what happens in this chapter, for those of you who aren't like, yeah. The thing is, there are some people, in like the theory people, who are like, yes, Catelyn V, I know exactly what happens in that chapter, even though they're not numbered in the book. So this is the chapter where it's 2 before the Red Wedding, and it is like the Northern Army is leaving River Run to start the journey up to the Twins. And it starts with Catelyn convinces Robb to like leave his wife behind because, and she offers him like advice that he listens to, which is like, yeah, Walder's a dick, and while you might sit there while Walder's a dick to you, if Walder is super mean to like your wife, you're gonna get really mad at him, and that would be bad. And it continues up, and it has like, well, it starts off with kind of Catelyn ends up with both Edmure and Robb ending up being mad at her, and Catelyn being a little bit frustrating. So Edmure is kind of like all depressed because he's like getting married against his will, which is valid, and he's like, you know, I hope my wife is hot. And Catelyn is like, you know, you should not be worried about whether she's hot, like, and is kind of like sharp about it, and that makes Edmure feel bad. And Catelyn kind of thinks to herself, like, you know, is it really a crime to like want a pretty wife? And kind of like comes to a reasonable conclusion in her head, and does the thing where like she then doesn't go tell Edmure, like, you know, sorry I was sharp with you, like, I understand, like, you're being married against your will, it's reasonable for you to want the person you're being married to against your will to be someone who you're attracted to. But she does not do that, and just continues to be like, woe is me, Edmure is mad at me, sad. And this also, Robb is like, you know, after the wedding, he tells them, like, we're going to go north. And then there's a really good conversation between Robb and Catelyn where Robb kind of says, like, he's going to declare Jon as his heir. And, like, you know, sorry, Catelyn, I think you're an extremely well-written character, and you do get too much crap. But, like, Jon being Robb's heir is extremely reasonable. And Catelyn is like very clearly she wants like something Royce, like Robb's second cousin from the Vale, to be his heir. And she's all these concerns of like, yeah, but like what if Jon's like has like children later and they go against you? And like Robb has very good answers for all of these. Like, Jon is obviously a more trustworthy heir than the other people you can pick. And I say this like keeping in mind that I'm biased in favor of Jon, because like I read Jon chapters and like Jon. But Catelyn, she has a line in her head where she's like, you know, like all I like Edmure and Robb are mad at me, and like all I've done is like speak truth. Like, can they not handle like me speaking truth to them? And it's like, well, one of them you realized that you kind of were too harsh, like a scene later, and then the other one, no, sorry, Catelyn, you just like you have good reasons to not like Jon. Like, I don't expect you to like Jon. Like it's reasonable to, you know, if you think. If your husband like cheats on you and brings back the kid of the person he cheated on you with, to like you should treat him well, but obviously like it is a human reaction to be slightly resentful and mistrustful of Jon. But anyway, that's not the point, because I actually think the most important part of this scene is then they get news that Balon Greyjoy is dead. And Robb is kind of like, people are asking questions like, oh, what are you going to do, like, about Moat Cailin? And he's kind of like, yes, I have plans, but you're not sure what his plan is. And then it's like Balon dies, and he's like, okay, so Victarion, who's holding Moat Cailin, he's going to have to go back to the Iron Islands to press his claim. And Asha. I always forget, it's Asha or Yara, and it's like, the switches in the book and show, but I always forget which is which. I think it's Asha. Why did they change that? What a strange decision. Like, it's a neutral or whatever. Getting rid of this entire chapter was a stranger decision. So they find out that Balon is dead, and they realize that, like, all of the captains are going to basically have to go back to the Iron Islands to deal with succession, because it's going to be such a mess, and, like, all the Iron Islands, like, captains think of themselves as, like, the king of their own ship. So Robb comes up with this plan to, like, team up with Howland Reed and, like, send people to find Howland Reed and have Howland Reed lead them, like, above the neck. So then, like, he can attack Moat Cailin from both sides. And he has Lord Great John Umber lead the van. And if you remember, on the way down, it's in the show, it's like, you want me leading the van.
I will lead the van, or I will take my men and march them home.
And then, like, Grey Wind bites his finger off, and now Robb is like, you can lead the van. And John Umber's like, I'm gonna take Moat Cailin before you even get there to flank people. And it's, like, kind of hype. And then he also tells them, like, I'm making Jon my heir. And Catelyn is like, I've been trapped. But okay, so that's what happens. So why do I think this is a really noteworthy chapter from a narrative perspective? Because that is the main purpose of this. When I read this, I was like, damn, this got cut, and, like, the narrative works so much better with it. And I want to talk about, like, how when you read things, our emotional reaction is based on, like, change in tension, or, like, is on the margins. So, like, if you're reading about someone's life that's, like, already completely depressingly sad, and then it becomes, like, a little more sad, and, like, tragedy strikes, that's not as emotionally impactful as doing, like, the bigger change. So if you think of generally, if you graph it out, you have over time, you have time and optimism towards the prospects of Robb Stark. This is going to get mirrored by the camera, so it's going to be going the wrong way for you, whatever. In a Game of Thrones, he becomes, like, it ends with them being like, King of the North, and you're like, let's go, this guy's hype. And then Clash of Kings, like, he wins some more battles, but then, like, he kind of starts messing some stuff up, and then in the entirety of Storm of Swords up to this point, it's on, like, page 500, things are just, like, going badly for Robb, and you're getting, like, this uneasy feeling. That's foreshadowing, because, like, the Red Wedding's gonna happen, where it's, like, the Frey betrayal, Robb, like, going against he wasn't gonna, like, marry the Frey girl, and has to, like, he's gonna lose the support of the Freys, and then executes Lord Karstark, and Jaime gets freed, and they lose Winterfell, and they lose Moat Cailin, and, like, because Theon betrays him, and, like, the entire time, like, Robb is just going down and down and down. And, like, the normal story structure is, like, if you think of, like, odds of our hero winning, and Robb is our hero, it's, like, it goes lower and lower and lower and lower, and then, like, sudden victory. It's, like, a very normal way that, like, we kind of expect in stories. Like, in the climax, things are going to be at their most dire, but then, like, we rebound, and then we get victory, and it's emotionally satisfying, and it works. And George knows you have this expectation. So it's like, while it is, you still get nervous and more tense as it, like, things go downhill and downhill. Basically, nothing before this chapter that's, like, optimistic happens for Robb, really. Like, even the stuff where it's like, okay, like, in getting, like, married, it's like, oh, that's nice, he got married, but it's, like, it's really concerning. And, like, him finding out that Balon is dead, and him having this plan to retake Moat Cailin, seems like such a plausible plan. Like, while you're reading it, it feels like when you get to that end of that chapter, it feels like you're reading the turn of the tide. There's a chapter in the Two Towers, the turn of the tide, where it's like, you feel like holy crap, we've had bad momentum, and now, like, we suddenly have a little dip of positive momentum. And, like, you're still nervous because it's not over the top, and George knows that he can be, like, subtle about this turn, and you'll still latch onto it. Like, he doesn't have to make everything overly bad and then everything overly good. Even if it's just, like, it's slowly getting worse, and, like, everything is getting worse, and then he gives you, like, oh, this little bit of optimism. You take that optimism, that little bit of optimism, and in your head, it's a big, like, jump up in optimism because you know how stories work. And Robb is the hero. And things are getting worse, but obviously Robb isn't going to die. So it's like, suddenly, you get this jump up. And you get this, like, this second wind. And you're like, holy crap, we are so back. And, I mean, for first read, obviously, you know what's going to happen. But, I mean, on reread, you can appreciate the storytelling craft of it. And it gives this reaction of, like, we are back. And I could feel my emotions wanting to think this, despite the fact that I knew it goes poorly. And it's just, like, the blip back up into optimism makes the Red Wedding hit so much harder. I think on reread as well, because, like, obviously on reread this entire time, now for the reread impact, I'm going through and I'm like, I can see it falling apart for Robb. And, like, you can see just things go badly, thing goes badly, event goes badly, and it, like, it gives it a sense of inevitability. But then it's like, if it's inevitable, like, it couldn't be avoided. But then, like, and it felt hopeless anyways. Like, it felt like he was gonna just lose and die anyways. But then I read this chapter and I'm like, damn, like, if the Red Wedding had been less red and been a normal wedding, Robb had, like, a good plan that probably would have worked. And, like, would he have ended up beating the Lannisters in the war? Like, I don't know. But I think he would have retaken the North. And, like, we know from Feast and Dance that the South ends up being a kind of a clusterfuck. Like, if there was a secure, Stark-held North, and, like, we see what's going on in the North and with, like, Dance, if there's a Robb Stark-led army there, like, Ramsay Bolton is not holding the North against a Robb Stark-led army. So it makes it hit, the Red Wedding hit even harder because this chapter gives, like, the detail, the emotional weight to the fact that without the Red Wedding, Robb had a good plan without sacrificing any of the foreshadowing and tension buildup from the rest of the novel. It also does a really good job of setting up later, of making Jon's choice later in the book to either be legitimized by Stannis and become Lord of Winterfell. More ironic because we know Robb made him his heir. I forget what happens with the Dance. Does he get that letter? Maybe he doesn't. I actually forget if he finds out that Robb made him his heir. Now I'm really interested on reread to find out, but I haven't read Dance with Dragons for like 9 years, so cut me a break on that one. But yeah, that was my spoiler chapter highlight. It's such a good chapter. It's great from, like, Catelyn's character writing perspective, but I think it's even better from a, like, priming your emotions and understanding your expectations of story structure and what emotions you will feel to gather maximum pain and impact, which George is obviously absurdly good at, and it's a huge reason that, you know, people saw George Martin and it's like, oh, he does all these new things, like, he kills characters, and that was, like, a big takeaway. But then when other people do it, it doesn't work. And it doesn't not work for other people because George did it first. It doesn't work for other people because George did it better.